Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Informa webinars and this evening's session, The Power of Strategic Thinking, Building Outstanding Value with Sanjeev Lomba. My name is Delna Kama and I'm a part of the training production team at Informa. Kindly excuse the time we spent. Sorry for the error. We're back online. And I have here with me Sanjeev Lomba, but before we go on with introductions, I'd just like to discuss a couple of housekeeping points that would tide you through the next few minutes of the webinar. The recording of this webinar will be available to you, provided in a link and shall be emailed to you. However, do give us about 3 working days to get back to you on this. Please do take time to complete the post-webinar survey that will pop up at the end of this session. You can also type your questions throughout the session, but time will be allocated at the end of the webinar for the speaker to address your questions. Now's the time to make introductions, and let me introduce you to Sanjeev Lomba. Sanjeev is a management speaker, a strategy facilitator, a trainer, and an executive coach. Sanjeev is also the winner of the UK National Training Awards for 2009 for achieving a high return on investment from training. Sanjeev is the founder and principal at The Real Potential and has turned around many companies from different sectors to growth and success. Welcome, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Delna. Welcome, everyone, to this short session, and great to be with you. Let me start with a reflection. I'd like you to think about this. Just imagine your business or your part of the business, right? Whatever you're working in, just think about your business or your part of the business. If the unrestrained business success, strategic success, just think about this. If the unrestrained potential for strategic success and business success is 100, right? What are you touching today? Right? Just have a think about this. That your unrestrained, absolute and total potential for business success, business growth, strategic success is 100. What are you touching today? And you know, when I ask this question, very often people will come up with a number like 60, 70, maybe you're thinking even sometimes 80. If you're thinking 80, then you don't need to listen to this webinar. I need to listen to you, right? Because if you ask me in my own business, I don't think I'm even reaching close to 10%. But excuse me. So when I ask this question, people think, and as they think, that number starts to come down. And overall, we hit something like 20%. Okay. So, and by the way, there's no, I'm not giving you any framework or anything like that. I'm asking for a gut feel reaction. So then the question is, it's a simple question. And the question is that if you are hitting 20%, okay, out of 100, so 100 is what you can achieve, you're hitting 20. The question is, where is that 80? What is holding back that 80? What blocks that 80? What comes in the way of that 80? That's the real question. So the number is not important, it's the gap. And I'll give this to you. We're on a webinar. If someday we're face to face, I can even get it's great to interact and you folks can tell me. But let me tell you what people say. So the moment I say where is that 80, what's coming in the way? People talk about the business environment. They talk about economics. Okay, they talk about well, competitors come in the way because we have difficulty, we're always competing and so on. Sorry, my spelling is going wrong here. So competitors, what else? The market is slow. What else? There's too much politics, right? What else? What about the organization structure? Okay. And then they talk about what else? Resources. There's shortage of resources. We don't have enough time. We don't have the right skills. People come in the way. And all of this goes on. Organization structure, resources. Some people say also our processes. We don't have the right processes and so on. So the environment, economics, competitors, markets, organization, resources, time, skills, people, politics, and so on. This is what is, and the list goes on. Okay. And the answer here is if and only if I had all of these and everything was fine, then I would be able to come close to 100. But here's the other question, that eventually someone, when I say what comes in the way of that 80, someone also says me, right? What am I talking about? My own risk aversedness. Okay, my own risk taking and my capacity, my freedom to take risks. This comes in the way. People talk about confidence. That in reaching and really getting to that close to that 100 and closing the gap on the 80, my confidence. So me, my risk aversedness, my confidence, my own, and then what happens? I become nervous. Yeah. And so on. And you know what? All of this, so you got two lists over here, folks. You got one list over here at the top. And this is all what I would call, let's label that as external factors, okay? So you got external factors. And what I mean by external is external to me as an individual. And then you've got internal factors, right? And in the internal factor, what is the driving emotion behind all of this stuff? Oops, sorry. What is the driving emotion behind me, risk aversedness, confidence, nerves, etc.? It's that four-letter word which looks like this. What if? What if competitors come in before me? What if my product doesn't, fit in the marketplace? What if my customers don't recognize what I'm telling them? And the moment you're in the what if, and the moment your mind goes into the I hope it works, you're in fear, right? So you've got two lists over here. You've got this top list, and you've got this one over here. Honestly, hand on heart, tell me, which one of these lists is the real blocking point? And of course, it's that list at the bottom. There's no question about it, guys. Look, this is not a problem. You can see my cursor, right? This is not the problem. Why is this not the problem? Because you know, something or the other is happening in your external world today. I'm coming on to talking about strategic thinking. What is strategic thinking? We're going to define strategy. We're going to define strategic thinking and give you some real hard input into reshaping your thinking. But before we can do that, we need to get over something, and that is the state of our mind. Where is our mind? You know, what is it thinking about? And that's the big issue, because this, my friends, is not the problem. How can that be a problem? Something or the other is happening every day in externally. I mean, external to you, something or the other is happening every day of your life. You know, if it's not Ebola, it is a tsunami. If it's not tsunami, then the markets have crashed. If the markets haven't crashed, then you know China's stock markets are losing money. If that's not happening, then you know Syria has happened. Something or the other is going on every day of your life. How can that be a problem? That is not a problem. That is a situation. If you want to get into strategic thinking, first of all, you have to watch the state of the mind. That is not a problem, that is a situation. What turns every situation into a problem is not what it is, but it's in the way that we as individuals engage with it, right? Let me tell you a story. And this story will summarize the whole strategic thinking that I want to get across to you. And this is a real occurrence, okay, a real case. So let me take you back to November 2008. November 2008, I was teaching a program in London called the 5-day MBA, okay? We do that for Informa here in Dubai as well. And in that program, there was a lady, this was in London, there was a lady on that program who owns her own business, okay? Okay, her name is Anita. So Anita was on this program, and she has her own business. Her business is in interiors, interior designs, you know, fit outs. She can completely fit out your house. She can redo the whole thing, make it look amazing, and so on. And her specialization is kitchens. So state of the art, up to date, modern, new kitchens. That's what she does. So she came to that program, and now again, this is November 2008, right? And you know, until 6 weeks before that, in October 2008, the two most popular words in the world began with a C and C were Coca-Cola, right? Everyone knows Coca-Cola. The two most popular words in the world. And overnight, in October 2008, they were replaced by another pair of words which began with a C and C. And what was that? Credit crunch. Credit crunch. That was the economic meltdown. And I remember I was in Dubai, where I'm sitting right now, in the World Trade Center, and just downstairs was something called Cityscape, right? Cityscape, right? And it's a huge property exhibition. And I remember I was there and I was thinking, well, maybe it's not a bad idea to invest in a little property in Dubai. I myself live in London. And I thought that would be a good idea. And you know what? I nearly signed up for a property. And just as I was about to sign, there was a huge message that went out, and they said, stop selling. No one was allowed to sell. Why? Because the world had crashed economically, and credit crunch had happened. Actually, I'm lucky I didn't buy it, because I was looking for a property in Al Reem, and the property prices were 1,200 dirhams a square foot, and suddenly, within a matter of 2 hours, they'd fallen to 500 a square foot. So I got saved. But this is the environment in which I was doing that 5-day MBA, where Anita had come to this MBA. So anyway, you know the background. She's got this business. Now, we were sitting at dinner in the evening, and Anita said to me, you know what, Sanjeev, I'm really getting everything you're saying. You know, I got this whole strategy thing. I think it's clear in my mind, but you know what? My business problem is just too huge. And I said, really? What's your business problem? I didn't realize that we weren't talking about real business problems. What is it? She said, Sanjeev, credit crunch has happened. I said, really? And? She said, and? What do you mean, and? My business is destroyed. My market is going, my market is disappearing. That's why I've come here, because I'm in desperation. What do I do? And I said, really, Anita? Okay. Um, So, how does that give you a problem? She said, look, stop, please. I thought you were a friend. I thought you were here to help me, and you're just, she said, my market is disappearing. I said, all right, Anita, and guys, let's write these numbers. I said, okay, Anita, tell me, 1 year ago, before credit crunch happened, what were you making at the gross margin? What was your gross margin? She said, oh, that's easy. That was $1 million. Okay. She was making $1 million. I said, okay, so what would you call a success? And she said, oh, success for me is that if I had thought that if I had put in all the ideas I had, look at the language she's using. If I had put in the ideas I had, can you hear it? She's coming in the way of her own strategic success. Forget the world. If I had put in the ideas I had, in 2 years' time, I would go to 2 million. And I said, wow, brilliant. Doubling your business in 2 years? Fantastic, Anita, go for it. She said, Sanjeev, please, I really thought you were here to help me and you're teasing me. I said, okay, let me know. 1 year ago, before credit crunch happened, what was the size of your market? In other words, how much were people forking out on this kind of service on kitchens and so on. So in the UK, how much are people spending on kitchens and interior fit outs? And she said, that's easy. That was 2 billion. So $2 billion is what people are spending. And I said, and you said your market is disappearing. By how much? She said, I don't know, but in 6 months' time, I think it'll come down to 1/3. Wow, you're losing 33% of your market in 6 months' time. You've got yourself a problem. And I said, you know what, Rita, let's make it even more drastic. Forget that. Let's say that your market actually goes by half. It disappears. So your market is coming from 2 billion to 1 billion. Folks, can you see it? It's on your screen. It's on your screen. And I said, Rita, can you please get a hold of a calculator and divide for me 2 million by 1 billion? And the figure doesn't even appear on your calculator. It's that small. And then I said to her, listen, how many of your competitors are doing strategy like I've been telling you today? And their thinking is strategic. And how many of them are just sending out proposal after proposal and then looking for an answer? She said, well, even if 5% are doing it, like you said, Sanjeev, then I think they would be doing it. That would be quite amazing. And I said, stop. You mean you have the chance to put yourself in the top 5% and you can't make 2 million out of 1 billion? Is this all right? What a prejudice. And prejudice, my dear friends, is a massive, massive problem that we always put on ourselves. This is a barrier that we put on ourselves. We have a prejudice about everything, prejudice about the environment, prejudice about me, you know, prejudice about I couldn't possibly do that, prejudice about the world, what if competitors do come in, prejudice about someone else, if only he wasn't like that and she wasn't like that. Look at the word prejudice. Judging before what? Judging before an objective analysis. So this is not strategic thinking, and Anita didn't have strategic thinking. So then when she said, well, frankly, Sanjeev, now that you put it like that, divide 2 million by 1 billion, come on. I said, Rita, why can't you think of it like that? Our thinking is limited, folks. I was giving at that time a keynote speech to a group of CEOs from the banking industry across Europe. And they were saying, Sanjeev, there's a crisis. And you know what I said to them? And I'm not the first person to say it, but you know what I said? I said, folks, don't waste this crisis. There's an amazing opportunity in this crisis. What is that opportunity? I'm coming on to, and I want to get on to that point. So coming back to Rita's story, if we continue why this thinking is not strategic and how it became strategic, when she said, now that you put it like that, and I said, fine, are you ready to work? She said, I am. So then I said, okay, let me understand. Who are you selling to? By the way, note this down. This is the critical question. Who? We never ask this. If you want to go into strategic thinking, I'll come back and I'll pinpoint the importance of this question. I said, who are you selling to? She said, oh, I'm selling to wealthy people and bankers who live in Chelsea, Belgravia, the top areas of London. I said, fantastic. So what's the problem? Why don't you sell more to them? She said, Sanjeev, it's architects. I'm selling through architects, and that's the problem. By the way, my friends, if you want to shift your thinking to be strategic, then these 4 words really need to be addressed. Okay? Because you know what? If you would give me $1 for every time you said that in your heart, subconsciously, during a day, I'd be super mega wealthy, Your heart. And so she said, yeah, and that's the problem. I said, why? Why is that the problem? She said, architects, they don't come to my showroom. I said, how is that a problem? She said, well, the issue is that when I send out proposals to architects, I get a 1 in 12 conversion. Now look at this. 1 in 12 proposals she's sending out turns into a contract. And I said, and? She said, and if I don't send a proposal, and if they come to my showroom, I get a 1 in 3 conversion. Are you getting this? We often don't recognize the issue behind the issue. We see it face value. Architects don't come to my showroom. The problem is that how do we get the architects? So now that we've identified the issue, the job became very easy. I said, Rita, you've got state-of-the-art kitchens, operational, modern, working. So now look at this, guys. You want to hear the epilogue, right? And the epilogue is like this. Every Thursday evening, she started to do a cuisine evening in her showroom. One evening she's inviting the sushi chef from Nobu, Another evening she's inviting the tandoori chef from Tamarind, the top Indian restaurant in Mayfair, and so on. And there's a little jazz guitarist playing in the corner. She's sending out nice privatized invitations to architects, and guess who's flocking into into her showroom? Keep a note of this, because when I give you a model to understand strategic thinking, we will come back and I'll remind you that Rita's story has the whole answer in it. Anita's story, right? So then now the job became simple. Guess who's coming through the door in her showroom? Architects. And they come in and they're saying, hey, great, Anita, when's the next one? And the job is done. My friends, her business, and it's called Khaki Life, okay, I'm talking real companies here, grew at an incredible rate in a most difficult economic period when businesses like that had closed signs written across them all over the world. It's really not difficult. We are limited by our thinking. They say you are what you eat. I say you are what you think. You know, it's entirely up to you. So strategic thinking is what we're talking about. So we're going to come on and define what is strategy, then make this link that then why does this thinking become strategic? So the job was done, and and you know why she'd come to that program? She had come to that program because she said that my business is destroyed, and how can I shut this one down and start a new one? And it was through that same business that she achieved massive success. She sold it recently, about 2 years ago, for an excellent price. So thinking about this, and another thing I'll say to you then, one last point there. When the architects come in and she says to them, oh, Mr. Architect, Mrs. Architect, you know how your customers in Chelsea and Belgravia, every time they have the idea for a kitchen, a new kitchen or something like that, they're very anxious to see the design, right? They want to see the design within 24 hours. And the architects say what? Yeah, and that's the problem. See? And that's the problem. She said, well, look, come with me. Let me show you our design cell. You see over here, these two machines, these two computers, these are CAD CAM machines. This is where we do the design work. And you see this, the software which is on those machines. If I can load that software onto your designer's machines, forget 24 hours, I can have the designs returned within 5 or 6 hours. Wow, you can do that? Now the architects are seeing dollar signs because the architect's problem is what? The architect is competing with other architects to be able to sell into those customers. And if he can solve the most valuable problem of the customer, which is, design returns very quickly, then he or she is the one that's going to be chosen every time. So many strikes you're making with just one blow, and that is that you are showing the architects the value for them and the value for their customers. So keeping that in mind, that is the whole Rita thing. I'd like to introduce you to the notion of thinking about, well, before actually, I want to go into and ask you what is value, because we often talk about value. I've been talking about value this just now in the last 15 minutes. But the issue is, what is value? And value is probably the most misunderstood terms in business today, right? But before, and I'm going to come back to value in a second. I'm going to show you what a simple model for understanding value. But before we can talk about value, let's talk strategy. What is strategy? So far we've been talking about thinking. Now let's talk about what is strategy. Then we'll make it strategic thinking through value. So if I ask you what is strategy, and I ask often and regularly, even C-suite people, CEOs of huge corporations, and if I say what is strategy, oh, they give me all, a huge big definition, and all the textbook stuff comes out, and if I ask 10 people, they'll all give you 10 different definitions. But the important point is that my simple question is, but give me a definition. First, give me a definition and make me understand strategy in 5 minutes, but in such a way that I can apply it to my company tomorrow and generate excellent results from it. That's the challenge. And of course, no one can do that because everyone is utterly confused. What is strategy? Some people are saying it's a plan. Some people are saying there's 100 ways of cutting it, Now, here's the definitive answer. Folks, what is strategy is this. It's the route to our success. It's the route to growth, right? Wouldn't you agree? Strategy, think about the word strategy, strata, street, strat, whichever language you want to take it in. It's the route, it's the road to our destination. Whatever that destination is, the destination could be market share growth, it could be top line, bottom line, ROI, EBITDA, anything at all. The point is that is the destination, okay? The route to our destination is therefore strategy, strata, street, strat, route, whatever. But here's the point then. In business, there is only one place, only one set of routes, bar none. Okay? We're going to simplify strategy to the hilt, but simplify it to usable format. Strategy, there's only one set of routes. What is that one set of routes? That the only set of routes that will take you to to your destination, whatever that destination is, and that is the market. Wouldn't you agree? Your market, your customers, and your customers' values. Nothing else can take you to your destination. Look at the power of this. We're redefining strategy in very simple and very usable formats. Strategy is the route to our destination, to our success, whatever success means, whatever the destination is. There's only one set of roads that will take you there, and that is your customers and their values, your market and its values. Nothing else will take you there. Right, guys? Got that? So then we've talked about strategy, we've talked about thinking. Let's go into what is value. Because we've said that the only route to success is market plus its values. Okay, so let's go into what is value. So value is like this. I'd like you to think about your product or your service rather like an onion, right? You can see the onion there. Think about your product or your service rather like an onion. What do I mean? The core of the onion is the actual product or actual service itself. Okay? And all the value is out in the layers. What's bigger, the core or the layers? So why have I made it like an onion? Because in the core, I'm going to give you an example in a minute. In the core is the actual product or service, but as you're going further and further and further and further out, it's representing more and more and more and more value to your customers, right? So if you take the example of, let's say, Virgin Atlantic. So this is Virgin Atlantic. Let me just pull this to full screen. So let's take Virgin Atlantic. I can fly from London Heathrow to LAX, Los Angeles, in 11 hours direct. So can you see on the core, there's an 11-hour direct flight. Can you see that, guys? So the actual product is an 11-hour direct flight from London Heathrow to LAX. Fine, but look out into the layers. Flexibility, friendly service, entertainment, comfort. Now, if I'm traveling to LA with my son, now my son is 24, but let's say my sister lives in LA. I go also on work for Johnson & Johnson and so on to LA. But so let's say I'm traveling with my family and my son is 13 or 14. One of the outer layers of my value onion is saying entertainment. Can you see that? So if entertainment is on the outer layer of my value, one of the outermost layer of the value onion, you need to understand and unearth and discover this full value onion. What does it look like? And having got the value onion, then and only then do you move into the second onion and build the second onion, and that is the response onion. So life is made up of two onions, or let's even say two halves of an onion. You know, you folks might like that Indian dish called chicken do pyaza, right? Do pyaza means two onions, literally. So this is like chicken do pyaza. So if entertainment is on the one of the outer layers, and it's layer number 2, and you go layer by layer by layer, let's say this is layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, like that. So layer 2 from the outside is entertainment. Then the matching layer 2 response on the response onion could be, let's put the latest Xbox games. Pre-released, you know, they haven't even come onto the market. So then what happens? Now my son doesn't pick up the phone when he gets to LA. He doesn't pick up the phone and speak to his friends back in London and say, hey guys, man, guess what? I just flew 11 hours direct. That's not exciting. Not in today's day and age. Now he picks up the phone and says to his friends, whoa, man, you want to see, you know, I just played FIFA 2016. Wow, crazy, crazy graphics. Absolutely amazing graphics. You know, I mean, the graphics were so good that even on a small screen, I had to duck because it felt like the ball was going to come out and hit me on the nose. And this is the game that you guys are going to play 3 months later. That is value. The next time, which airline are you going to fly? Right? And it's not so logical. And also, what will you pay? Right? You'll easily pay 10%, 20%, $40, $60, $100 more. And it's not logical that you will say, yes, look, Virgin Atlantic, give my son an Xbox game pre-release to pay. That to me is worth $40. So I will pay $40 more than British Airways. No, it's not so logical. The thing about value is it's subjective. It belongs to people. It belongs to customers, right? So it's not so obvious and it's not so logical. It is completely emotional. It forms a pattern in your mind to say that next time I will fly the airline that look after my family. I'm not saying anything revolutionary, but I am saying it in a revolutionary way because we need to understand and simplify what is this whole strategy and strategic logic. What is value? Because most of the times when we're talking about value, we're actually only talking about added value. Added value is weak. Added value means you take your car for a service and someone washes it for you. You buy a Happy Meal and you get a toy, right? That is added value. So this is the crux of it all, that understanding that what is the value onion, customer by customer. This is the important thing. Market segment by market segment. Remember I'd written up on that previous slide, whose value onion is the critical question, right? Whose value onion will give you the answer. Why? Because when I'm traveling with my family, my value onion will look very different to when I'm traveling on business. Even though the core is the same, the core will still be an 11-hour direct flight from London Heathrow to LAX. This is the point. We look at the core. Your thinking only goes as far as the core. You don't look beyond the core. And you delude yourself to think that you're differentiated. Honestly, put your hand on your heart. How many airlines can do the same? How many of your competitors can do exactly the same kind of product or the same kind of service? We delude ourselves. We think that we're differentiating. We're not differentiating at all. If you really want to differentiate and you want to go beyond this differentiation, in today's day and age, it's not enough to be differentiated. It is not. You know, you need to be distinguished. You need to be distinguished. Let me give you an example. To be different, Lenovo differentiates with IBM, Acer differentiates with Dell, Sony differentiates with Toshiba. This is differentiation, right? And frankly, what's the difference between any of those six machines? Then it just comes down to a little matter of taste and price. Ultimately, it's price. But if I say a MacBook Air, can you name me a differentiator to that? Can you name me one? No, because Apple, certainly until Steve Jobs was alive, certainly until Steve Jobs was alive, was not a differentiated company. It was a distinguished company. Google is a distinguished company. Toyota is a distinguished company. So what you need to do is to be distinguished. How do you distinguish yourself and not be just differentiated is by going further and further out and developing responses at the outer layer of the value onion. If I had said to you, think about this, if I had said to you 15 years ago, if I said to you that in 12 years time, there will be a company, catch these three parameters I'm going to tell you. Very, very interesting. If I said to you 15 years ago that in 20 years time, in 12 years time, there will be an organization which actively chooses not to sell into the highest volume market segment. In other words, it's not playing in the biggest market in the world available to it. Number one, right? Three parameters. Number one, it's not going to play in the biggest volume market segment. Number two, second parameter, it'll sell its products for 3 times the price of its competitors. Right? So parameter one, it's not playing in the highest volume market segment available to it. Parameter two, that it will sell its products for 3 times the price of its competitors. And parameter three is that it will be the highest market capitalized company in the world. You wouldn't believe me. You would have told me, Sanjeev, I think you need to be I think you need to see a psychologist, man, because this is not working. Well, it's in front of you. It's in front of me. A MacBook Apple, this is the answer, right? That is the guts. That is the strategic brilliance. That is the thinking that gets you there. So what is the thinking? What is that strategic thinking? Well, Steve Jobs never made product. I'm saying some pretty controversial things, but think about this. He wasn't focused on the core. Of course, the core has to, one thing I'm saying to you, by the way, by making the core the smallest part of the onion, I am not saying that the core is unimportant. That's not what I'm saying. Because after all, if the core is rotten, the whole onion will be rotten, right? So I'm not saying that. However, what I am saying is that to the customer, the core represents least value. Your product actually represents least value to your customers. It's not what it is that your customers value, but what it brings to them that they value. And we go around selling product, but customers only buy value. That's strategic thinking. And if you see, actually, if you get the time, have a look at a documentary. It's called The Billionaire Hippie. Okay, it's about Steve Jobs. You'll find it on YouTube. And there's a scene which was really filmed. This was long time back when they were releasing the mouse. You know, they were designing the mouse. And there you have a huge whiteboard, you know, and the 7 technical guys, they're standing up there. You know, Steve, what's his name, Wozniacki or whatever, the you know, the big technical guy at Apple. He was there along with the whole technical team, and they're writing algorithm after algorithm after algorithm, you know, working out this mouse. But there on the other side of the room, far in a corner, is Mr. Steve Jobs. Okay, he's sitting and he's just rocking in his chair. He was just rocking in his chair. And he's playing with something which looks like the shell of a mouse on his jeans. And the guy is lost to the world. He's not in that room at all, right? So here's the difference. He was imagining being his own customer. His thought was not on, and the algorithms are absolutely right. That's what has to happen for the product to be made. There's no question about it. But it's not just what it is, it's what it brings that is more important. So the result was that his thinking was highly innovative. Why? Because he never thought product out. He thought customer value in. He first thought value onion, then he designed response onions. But you know what we are doing all the time? We're always putting response onions before. We're always thinking, this is my product, how can I go out and fit it, you know, in front of my customers and to other customers? And that's not going to succeed because at best you'll be differentiated. You want to be distinguished? You build strategic thinking. And just to come back and remind you, what is strategy? Strategy is the route to our destination. If strategy is the route to our destination in business, there is only one set of routes, and that is your customers, your sets of customers, and their values. One set of customers, value onion, will look very different to another set of customers. That's why you've got to segment your market, target your market, make a decision who you are serving, just like Apple had made a decision that they're not going to sell to the highest volume market segment available to them. What was the highest volume market segment? For laptops. Just think about laptops. The biggest market segment for laptops is what? Companies, right? Corporations. Because everyone who works in organizations, corporations across the world has a laptop. So that's the biggest, and they made a conscious decision not to sell into that. They made a decision to go to private individuals, and that too around designers and media and this kind of stuff. And they appeal to the younger people. Whatever it is, you choose your market segments, and you can work in 5, 10, that's okay, market segments. But then if you understand that if you're working in 5 market segments, you'll have 5 value onions. Even though the core is the same, it's the same product. It's still a MacBook Air, 12-inch, 15-inch, whatever, 11-inch, 13-inch. But the value of that product in those different markets is going to be different. You've got to understand that. So first, identify who you want to sell to, who you want to play with, which are your markets, which are your target markets. Then go and properly sit down and understand their value onions. But please do me a favor. Do not send out boring questionnaires, which are market research, boring. What do you do with market research questionnaires? You put them in the bin, right? No, go and look at your customers in the eyes and understand. Don't ask them questions that, will you buy my product, which is the most dumb question we can ask the market. Go and ask the market, what do you do? What's your priority? What gives you a pain? And understand from there. Then and only then, design your response onions to match the value onions. Actually, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to fail. And that's what Rita was doing. Now, not before. Before, she was putting response before value. That's why she was, susceptible to just being destroyed by credit crunch, because she was sending out proposal after proposal. My kitchens, my interiors, my fit outs, what I can do for you. Response. But the moment that she started to get architects to come through her door, look at the value onions of the customers. The outer layers of the people who are wealthy people living in Chelsea and Belgravia is that once they have a design in their mind, they want to see the design within 24 hours. That's the outer layer of the value onions, not the design itself even. And what is the outer layer of the value onion of the architects? Because you have to serve several value onions. It is that if they can do a design return in 5 to 6 hours, then what's going to happen? Their own business is going to go up. If their business goes up, they will put more business by the way of Anita, because they know that Anita is the person who's helping them, right? It's as simple as that, folks. And you've got to have the guts. Let me give you an example of, I'll just close in about 3 or 4 minutes, so that if there's any questions, please think about any questions you few folks might have. But, I'll give you an example of a non-strategic thinking product. I can give you so many. Look, what happened to Nokia? Nokia is not strategic thinking. What a successful brand in its time. But where are they now? Why? Because the value onions of the markets were changing. The more you were getting into warp technology, you were getting internet on the mobile phones and so on, people needed a bigger screen. They needed colorful screens, they needed touch screens. But what did Nokia say? Nokia said, no, 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 no. It's all about menus and brilliant menus, and we have excellent menus. No doubt they had the best menus in the world. But if that's not the relevant or the outer layer response to the new value onions that are coming up, one thing, folks, in strategic thinking, understand that today's value onions will not be tomorrow's value onions for the same market segment, right? Who's flying in business class today? Look at that. Their value onions are changing. Their food requirements are changing. They're liking more exotic food because you have more people from the Middle East, from India, from China who are flying in business class. They're also looking for healthier food, right? Because when you're traveling, you're just constantly eating junk. So if the value onions are changing, you don't move your response onion in line, you're going to be in trouble. So this is why Rita's whole story went from non-strategic to strategic. Another example, so Nokia is there. Xerox is there. Kodak is there. These were companies, look where they are now, destroyed. Why? Because they thought product. Kodak remained hard in saying, you know what? It's all about film, and I'm an expert in film. That's what I do. Well, stop. It's not what you do that's important. It's what is valued that is important. And if you need to shift what you do by the changing nature of what is valued in the world, in the market, then you'd better shift, because otherwise you're going to become a Nokia, a Xerox, a Kodak. Marks and Spencer nearly died, but they reconnected with the market and they got saved. So this is where you need to think. So in summary, what is strategic thinking? Strategic thinking is thinking from market and customers in and not from product out. Because companies that think product out, they are in danger. Think about Concord. Concord was not I don't call that an innovation. And you would say that, but Sanjeev, what an innovation. If you think about the most innovative product in the airline industry or in the passenger aircraft industry in the last century, you'd have to say Concorde, supersonic airliner. But the problem was there was no sensible market value onion of any sensible market segment which was happy to pay $10,000 to fly from London to New York and take 3 hours off the time. So that was not driven by market. Yes, Boeing came along and said, we could have done one, right? We could have made one. And they had one in design, but they didn't launch it because they said there's no market to carry 100 passengers uncomfortably but royally between London and New York and take 3 hours of the time. And that is the reason why that's not an innovation. No, that was an excellent invention. Well, if you got lots and lots of money and you want to bring development to mankind, I'm very happy. Please go ahead and invent. But if you want to innovate so that you also make money and you want to grow and you want to succeed, then don't look to the response first. Don't look to your product first. Look to the markets and its value onions and then design your innovation and your products around it. You'll be hugely successful. Okay, folks? So strategic thinking, first we talked about the thinking. Our thinking is in the wrong place. It's not in the externals that the problem lies. It is with us. Look at Anita's story. I keep calling her Rita. Anita's story. Okay, the second thing is, that's the thinking. The second thing is, what is strategy? Strategy is the root. Therefore, that's the market and its values. Drive it from there, then and only then design your products and services. You'll be massively successful. So, folks, we can carry on, but there I'd like to just hit a pause and see, are there any questions? If you have a question, just type it out, and that would be really good. No? Okay, I've got one question that's come up is that you're asking, okay, this is about segmentation. What is a market segment? How do you segment your market? Excellent question, guys. Excellent question. Because as we said, that Apple decided not to play in the biggest market segment, which is companies, corporations. So how do you first design and understand your market segments? Very simple. Very simple. Just sit down and write a list of who's out there. Within the context of your product and service, of course, just write who's there. So that will give you a list of who's there. Let's just say for I don't know, take anything. Take Toyota, for example. Who's there? So who's there might be single people, students, young couples with children, professionals, companies, corporations, industrial organizations, even hospital organizations, whatever it is. You've got all of these are the who. Okay, who. Next question you need to ask once you've got a list of who is why. Why? For example, let's say for Jet Airways, I can travel from Dubai to India in 4 hours, 3 hours, right? Okay. So let's keep it real because I live in London. So I can travel from London to Delhi in 8 hours direct. Fine, great. But listen to this. Who and why do people travel between London and Delhi? If you say who, one of the groups will be NRIs, right? Non-resident Indians like me. Another group, if you say who, will be Indian tourists. Now here's the interesting thing. Once you said what is the market segment, then you ask why. When you ask why, you will understand the value onion. So the why is, why do NRIs, non-resident Indians, travel to India? Well, they travel for weddings, they travel for family, they travel to meet friends, they carry gifts. Are you getting this? Now, when you say, why do Indian tourists travel to London? You've got a very, very different answer. And the answer is they travel to enjoy Europe, multiple destinations, and so on. So now look, by asking who and why, you've got two different market segments, and you've also got their value onion. Now, when you make the response onion, it'll be different for both market segments. The response onion outer layer for NRIs will be, give these guys 46 kilos to carry, even in economy. And that's true, you can do that, right? Whereas for Indian tourists who are booking London to Bombay to London, you only give them 23 kilos because that's not important for them. You give them something else, and that might be vouchers on internal flights in Europe, because when you come to London, you go 2 days to Paris, you go 2 days to Rome, like that. So look, market segments you will get by saying who and why, and that'll also give you the value onion. Then you make the response onion. So someone has asked a question: how do we use strategic thinking in personal front? For example, while looking for new opportunities, applying for jobs in the market, we work in or new markets. Great question. And actually, well, thank you for saying it was a great session and insightful. Very, very good question. Actually, the strategic thinking I'm giving you, and this is from Malavika Tiwari. Malavika, thanks for that question. It's amazing. You know why? Because everything I'm saying is actually about life. So to give you your answer, you need to sit down and work out your own value onion, right? Write down what is, so let's say, for example, that you're an IT person and you've been trained in cloud computing, for example. That's the core of what you have, of your onion. Now, start working out, what is it that why have I done what I've done? And if you say that, okay, and that'll give you your value onion. So for example, supposing the outermost layer of your value onion is that you want to have freedom, personal freedom, right? And financial freedom, personal freedom, you want to call the shots in your life, and that's the outer layer of your value onion. Then your response onion is going to be, how can I work, which companies can I work to get the right experience in order for me to start up my own IT business in 4 years, 5 years time. And that way you're carving out a life pattern. So you're working for this IT company or that IT company, Infosys, Wipro, whoever, just becomes the response to your value. Okay? Folks, I've enjoyed talking to you, and thank you for your comments to say that it was insightful and good session. If you would like to know more, learn more, look up the Informa. You've come on Informa. Look up Informa's website. Look at certainly my name. I'm very happy, and other speakers who are very powerful as well. My own programs, I do, for example, the 5-day MBA. I do strategic and people leadership, strategic direction and people leadership. The current program I'm doing in Dubai right now is advanced presentation skills with a personal impact, all of these kind of programs. So please look it up, and I look forward. And when you come to one of these programs, do identify yourself that you saw me. So my name is Sanjeev Lumba, and I look forward to talking to you guys again. And thank you very much to Delna for making this work so beautifully.